Hey there, everyone. This is Eric from Hovercast TCG, bringing you guys some more quality TCG content and discussion for all ages. Today, I'm alone, actually. Travis and Britt aren't here, as you can probably tell. Britt is having some computer issues, and Travis is in Seattle currently, preparing to play in the Seattle Regionals this weekend. So, I'm going to be doing a solo Hovercast this week. It's been a while since we did a last Hovercast, mainly due to a lot of technical issues, but hopefully those have all been solved, and you'll be seeing a lot more content from us both on Twitch and on YouTube. But since it's only me this week, I'm going to be answering some fan questions because it doesn't really make sense to answer my own questions. So I asked you guys on Facebook and Twitter for some questions going to Seattle Regionals, and I'm here to answer them today. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first question is from Jake Ewert, and he says, do you think Gyarados could win the tournament with how the meta is shaping up? Would you play 4 Rescue Stretcher or 4 Buddy Buddy, or even a combination of both? Yeah, I definitely think Gyarados could win the tournament. I think Gyarados is probably the best deck in the format. It's really good. I think you should play 4 Rescue Stretcher. You don't need Buddy Buddy at all, and Rescue Stretcher is just an objectively better Buddy Buddy. So there's no reason to run it to run Buddy Buddy over Rescue Stretcher, and you don't really need any more recovery because you have Puzzle of Time. Yeah, I think that's about it for that. Gyarados is really strong. If you're not prepared for it, you'll probably do pretty poorly if you play against it. So, yeah, Gyarados is really good. The next question is from Charles Randall, asking, why is Trevenant from Guardians Rising so underrated? I don't think it's underrated. I think it's appropriately rated. I think it's just a bad card. The Grass Phantom is really good, and it'll absolutely see play in Expanded. It probably makes Expanded broken, to be quite honest. But I don't think the Trevenant is very good. I think it's a very underwhelming card, unlike Garbodor, where you're punishing your opponent for setting up. Your opponent can just play all their cards down without any repercussions and just deny your damage that way. It is nice that it hits supporters, like that counts as 30 damage for it, but it's still a very underwhelming card. I think it's appropriately rated. The next question is from Malachi Meloy, and he says, what are the odds of Decidueye winning Seattle? Probably 10%, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. It's a solid tier 2, maybe low tier 1 deck currently. It's not nearly as oppressive as it was last format when it was like the clear best deck in the format, mostly because of Tapu Lele. But it's still a very good deck, and I would not be surprised to see it winning just because it's still ridiculously strong, because Vileplume is just broken. But I do think, I don't think it's the best deck in the format going into Seattle, but I wouldn't be surprised if it won. Okay, so now we have 2 questions from Steven Matz. The first question is, what's your thoughts on Volcanion in the current meta? I really like Volcanion. I think Volcanion is one of the best decks in the format currently because of Field Blower, Choice Band, and Turtonator. Brooklet Hill is also something that I think you could play in Volcanion. I'm not sure if it's the best stadium yet, but it's definitely something that you can play. So that's another card that it gained from Guardians Rising. And I mean, Volcanion was always really strong before, and it doesn't really lose much in this set. I think the biggest hindrance to it is Garbodor can kind of be tough if you don't play your Volcanion, like if you don't tech specifically for Garbodor by completely changing how you play the deck, which you can do. You don't really beat Garbodor if you don't do that, though. So I think Garbodor is probably its biggest problem, but it's definitely workable. But all your other matchups becomes a little bit more iffy because you're running a less like item-based being able to explode engine, I guess. Like Volcanion was always known for being able to go off like on turn 1 and just hit for a ridiculous amount of damage, if not turn 1, turn 2, and always put pressure. But if you tech it for Garbodor, it's not so much that style anymore where you're guaranteeing that. Like you can still get those insane turns, but it's a lot less common if you're playing, if you made your deck designed to beat Garbodor. So, but it's definitely still good. And the second part of your question is, which version of Sylveon do you prefer, the Hammers version or the heavier Delinquent version? Why can't you play them both together? I think they both should. I think they both belong. If you don't play Hammers, you just lose to so many things. You have to be able to hit the energy on the bench. That's just that's a necessity, basically. Wow, I forgot that word for a second. And I think a couple Delinquent, probably like 2 or 3 Delinquent is really good. I don't think you play the 4 Delinquent version. I think that's a little bit overkill. But I think you play 2 to 3 and you play Crushing Hammers. You definitely have space for it in Sylveon. That's not an issue. So I think that's probably what you want to do. That's probably your best bet. I'm not sure if Sylveon's a great deck, but I think that's probably the best way to build it. Okay, the next question is from Matthew DeRue, and it says, will Greninja make top 8, or will there be too many Decidueye around for Greninja to stand much of a chance? I think Greninja could make top 8. It's definitely a really good deck again. Tier 1 or Tier 2, like Decidueye, it's probably around that same tier of strength. But I don't think Decidueye is the biggest reason Greninja wouldn't make top 8. I think the biggest reason Greninja wouldn't make top 8 is because it's just such an inconsistent deck. That's the reason I haven't liked Greninja the entire year. It's always been a strong deck. I've always acknowledged that. I just hate playing it because it's so inconsistent, and sometimes you just can't even play Pokemon. And that's far too often than I'd like for a deck. But when it sets up, it's really good, especially with Field Blower and Choice Band. Choice Band lets you hit some crazy numbers now, like 170, like perfect math, with a giant Water Shuriken plus a Moonlight Slash. And Field Blower helps you deal with Garbodor, which, was Greninja's biggest issue for most of the season until Decidueye just dominated. But, yeah, I think Greninja could definitely make top 8. I could see it happening, but I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't either, just because it's such an inconsistent deck. But the next question is from Serena Radu, and she asks, what are your top 3 plays for the tournament? So my number 1 play would be Gyarados. I think Gyarados is absurd, like I've said already. It's really strong, doesn't need Lele's, which is also a really nice thing. It's a non-EX deck. It kind of reminds me of the Night March of this format, just because you can go off and hit some crazy numbers, and you also rely on Puzzle of Time and a lot of sequencing to make your deck shine. But I think Gyarados is the strongest right now. You lose to Decidueye, but it's not the best deck in the format anymore, so you don't need to worry about it as much. And you basically beat everything else. So if I was going to Seattle, I would absolutely play Gyarados. My second play would probably be probably Garbodor Drampa. I don't actually think I have a great list for it currently. I'm trying to test a list right now that has 0 VS Seeker, and I'm not really liking it. But Travis has a really good list that he posted on 6 prizes. So I would probably just neck deck his list and use his list for Seattle. It seems really strong. He's had some really good results in testing with it, I know. So I would probably play that. It just, a lot of people say it's the best deck in the format for a reason. It clearly has some strengths to it, even though I haven't had great results with it. So I would trust the community, and I would probably play it as my second choice. But I would play Gyarados. And then my third choice would be Volcanion, like I said earlier. It's really strong right now. It's really consistent still. I played it at the last regional, so I kind of know how to play it already. And the playstyle doesn't really change too much unless you tech for Garbodor heavily, which I don't think I would. I think I would just take an unfavorable matchup and just beat everything else. But yeah, I think Volcanion's just really strong still. So that'll be my third choice. Okay. The next question is a 5-parter from Alvin NG. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name. But it's a 5-parter, so let's get right into it. The first question is, which Garbodor variant, Drampa, Tauros, Espeon, or other, do you expect to be the most popular at Seattle? I expect the Drampa version to be the most popular because it's just objectively the best one, I think. Drampa is just an insane card. Tauros is just a really bad partner, in my opinion. I don't like Tauros as a card. I think it's just very passive and 60 damage per turn, potentially 90 with a Choice Band. It's not that great, and I think Drampa's just stronger. Righteous Edge is really good, and the ability to one-shot on turn 2 is something that Garbodor really needs, because otherwise you're just waiting for your opponent and playing pretty passively. So I think Drampa is the best version. I think it's going to be the most popular. I think Espeon is gaining some steam with Garbodor after it top 8'd, I want to say, in Milan last week. Excuse me. But I don't think that version is very strong on the mirror match. Espeon just seems like a liability. So I'm not sure it'll be the most popular, but I think it's probably the second best. I just think Tauros is really bad. And other, I don't know. There's probably a lot of ways to play Garbodor, so I wouldn't be surprised to see something zany and crazy come out. But the second question was thoughts on Lurantis GX now that the Lurantis promo is legal, allowing the deck to hit for more relevant numbers. Yeah, Lurantis is really, really good, I think. I don't think it's great for Seattle because Tapu Bulu isn't legal until Madison. But Tapu Bulu, Lurantis seems like a very good pairing. I think it's probably a tier 2, maybe tier 1 deck. I haven't tested it yet, unfortunately, because I can't find Lurantis promos online or in real life. I only have one online, thanks to a awesome viewer, Drew Sally. Shout out to you for giving me a code. But I'm still looking for another one or two, and it's just impossible to find. So I haven't been able to test it, but just on paper, Lurantis was already pretty strong already, and this is just the extra damage it needs. Like TDK, if you guys remember back in the day, it was only 2013, but yeah, that's 4 years ago. Wow. But yeah, Deoxys CX is what made that deck so ridiculously strong, which is plus 10 for all your plasma Pokemon, and this is plus 20 in its stacks. And you already play Lurantis, so it works out of a great evolution line. So the deck definitely has a lot going for it. Yeah, I need to test it more, but I think it's very strong. Not for Seattle, though, because you really need Tapu Bulu, because I think that's the perfect partner for Lurantis. But for Madison, I definitely think it's a good play. So look out for that. Definitely test it if you can. And get those Lurantis promos, because they're really hard to find for some reason. But the next part of your question was, how do you think players set playing Sylveon GX will adjust, knowing that a number of counters, example, turn 1 Hex, have been discussed? Do you just pray to go first, or do you play cards to search more EVs to prevent the donk, or do you play a different deck? I think people who are playing Sylveon at this point probably have tested that already, and they know that that's an issue with the deck, turn 1 Hex or Silent Lab. So I think they'll probably have already been able to counter that with a couple level balls or something like that. Like I personally play a couple level balls in my list, just so you don't get donked. But I think people who have been playing Sylveon already know their list really well and know how it works and if it works well or not, because Sylveon's a very high skill cap deck, and I'm assuming the people that play Sylveon have been playing Sylveon for a long time, because it's not one of those decks you can pick up like the day before regional and probably do well at, because there's so many choices you have to make every single turn. So they probably know their deck at this point. If they're going to play it, their list is probably the best list for them, just because they've probably practiced so much with it and know it inside and out. And I assume they're already teched for all these, issues like turn 1 Hex and such. So I'm sure they have ways around it. So yeah, I think they'll just play what they have. The next part of your question was odds on Ricky Licky Gao, second place finisher at Oregon State's making top 8. I don't know who that is, but I love me some memes, so I figured I'd answer that question. So I'm going to say I'm going to predict a Ricky Gao win. That's my prediction. So go Ricky Gao, prove me right. And then the final part of Alvin's question is, what is your dark horse sleeper pick? Gyarados, Mega Ray, other? Well, if Gyarados is an option, then Gyarados, because I think Gyarados is really, really strong. But if not for Gyarados, I would say probably Mega Gardevoir. A lot of the top players, like Brad Curcio and Azul and Xander Perot, they've all been saying Gardevoir is really strong, and I trust their judgment because they're good players. So if they like it, there's probably something about Mega Gardevoir worth liking. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a top player make a run with Mega Gardevoir just based on their testing results. So thank you for all those questions, Alvin. Thank you for the 5-parter. But now we have a question from Mark Manning. What do you feel is the best splashable tech to combat Alolan Ninetales? I don't think there really is one, because I don't think Alolan Ninetales is worth teching for. I think one that you could use, Travis was talking about this with me a couple days ago, but there's Team Flagrant. That's a possibility, just because when Ninetales attacks, it has to discard energy, so you just get rid of another energy for not allowing them to attack 2 turns in a row, potentially, if they just got rid of a DCE or something. If they want to attack 2 turns in a row, they have to retreat and Aqua Patch and such. So that's probably the best splashable tech, but I don't think you need to tech for it. It's not that good of a deck, in my opinion. It's probably tier 2, tier 3. You probably won't play it if you're doing well. So yeah, I wouldn't tech for it. And we're back. Sorry about that little cut there. You probably won't notice unless I said so, which I did. But yeah, the microphone cut out, so I'll have to re-record this, but I'm just going to start with the question that I left off on. So David Murillo on Twitter asks, why is Frogs making a comeback? Is it the meta or cards from Sun and Moon 2? It's a combination of both. Decidueye not being the best deck in the format anymore really helps it, because Decidueye is really strong and a really bad matchup for it. But it's not the best deck in the format anymore, like I said, so that's good for it. But also, it gains some cards from Sun and Moon 2. Field Blower and Choice Band are really good for it, as I've already said. So I think it's a combination of those two factors, bringing Greninja back. It was always a good deck, but just lost to Garb and Decidueye. And both of those answers are somewhat fixed because the Decidueye isn't as strong anymore, and now you have Field Blower. So yeah, the next question is from AJ Perez 44 on Twitter, and he asks, he's got a couple questions actually, but the first one is, what's hyped but is going to flop in Seattle, and why is it Sylveon? So I guess it's Sylveon, right? But actually, I think I would pick Sylveon. I think a lot of people have learned how to play against Sylveon, just because a lot of people, including myself, played Lapras last format, and it's a very similar deck, so people already know how to play around it. Plus, it's much more exploitable than Lapras because of Turn 1 Hex or Silent Lab. It can really disrupt the Sylveon setup. Plus, I don't think it's as good as Lapras. I think it's just a worse deck. It just didn't feel very good to me in testing. It's really underwhelmed me. So I actually wouldn't be surprised if it underwhelmed and flopped at Seattle, like the question asked. But I also think Garbodor Drampa will underperform at Seattle, not because I don't think it's a good deck. I think it will probably do very well, and there will be a lot of placings. But I think compared to how many people will play the deck, I think it's going to underperform statistically, just because I think there's going to be a ridiculous amount of people playing the deck, and I don't think a ridiculous amount of people playing the deck are going to make top 32 or anything like that. But then his next question is underrated cards that can make a good showing if intense testing is put in. I would say Tapu Koko, EX or GX, excuse me. I really like the card. I think it's really good. I'm not sure if it's the best card currently. I think next set it becomes one of the best decks because of Acerola and Super Scoop Up. But I think it's still good currently, maybe tier 2, tier 3. So I think someone, if they want to put in the time and make it work, they could definitely make it a tier 2, tier 1 deck. I'm not sure if it'll ever be the best deck in the format until those cards come out, but it's definitely something worth looking into, and I think that's one of the underlooked cards that's really good. And then you had your one final question from AJ Perez 44. With Decidueye Plume slightly on the decline and the return of Frogs and Gyarados, can Vespiquen make a showing as well? Yeah, I definitely think Vespiquen could. I think the biggest issue with Vespiquen is actually building the Vespiquen list itself. It's a really hard deck to build, not a hard deck to play, but a very hard deck to build correctly, I've figured out from testing it recently. I think it's really strong, but it really comes down to how you build the deck, and I think a lot of people will struggle with that because the set just came out like 3 weeks ago. But I wouldn't be surprised to see Vespiquen do well. I think it's very strong, but I think it's not a lot of people are going to have the perfect list, including myself. My list is nowhere near perfect yet, so I don't know if anyone's figured out the right list to make Vespiquen one of the best decks in the format yet. But I think once that happens, I would not be surprised to see Vespiquen in the top 8 or even potentially winning a tournament. I think it's that strong. And then the final question is from Michael Premawat. And he says, why are League Cups so hard? Good question, Mike. I don't know either. I have personally never won a League Cup or a Cities, so I feel your pain. League Cups are hard. So that's going to be a nice way to wrap up the Hovercast for this week. Good luck to everyone in Seattle. I'm sorry this video came out a little bit late Friday night, but I had to re-record this 3 times because of some technical issues. So hopefully this one works and I'm able to put this out for you guys. Please follow us on Twitter, Twitch, and here on YouTube. Subscribe here if you aren't already. Travis will be tweeting from Seattle this weekend, and Britt will be potentially at Madison, Origins, and Mexico, at least 2 of those 3. So be watching our Twitter for that, at HovercastTCG, for some live updates from them, as well as other top players and how they're doing. And be sure to follow me as well on Twitter, at OrgansmanTCG, as well as Britt and Travis. Their links will be in the description below, as well as mine and the Hovercast Twitter. But thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a good day. Bye.